Antinatalism is the view that bringing sentient beings, or human children, into existence is morally wrong. The arguments are varied, but they usually revolve around pointing out the badness of life, the badness which is unavoidable. If there are so many negative aspects of being alive, to make starting a new life not worth it for the potential child, then it's morally wrong to procreate. Regardless of the strength of particular arguments, the position itself is at least understandable and can be plausibly defended. However, in almost every case, we are looking at the close relationship between potential parents and their potential future child, which may or may not be conceived. That is, the moral judgment is based only by looking at the direct result of the decision to have a child, which is the child being born and living a life of a mix of good and bad moments. What happens when we broaden our scope? We can do that in at least two ways: by looking further in time and by looking at the actions of other people. This part will be somewhat confusing, but the confusion itself can tell us something important, so bear with me. Let's take the second method and let's consider a man who is thinking whether he should have a child. If he decides to not have children, then maybe he and his partner will split and she will have children with someone else. New people will be brought into existence. The parents will be different, and the children will also be different. What if she does not want children? This complicates the picture. After all, if a woman does not want children, but the man does, then if they break up, the man would have to find a woman who does want to start a family. Then, that new woman will have children with him instead of some other man. The man and the new woman may have the same number of children in the end. But the woman from the original case won't. Does the future now have less children or not? You might say, yes, of course, the first woman won't have children, so there will be less children in the future. But I hope that the confusing elaboration of the scenarios made space for some doubt. The thing is, we can't really answer the question, will there be less people in the future? If we change the dynamics of one couple, then we would have to consider a myriad of alternative relationships they could have with other people, and these changed interactions will influence yet another wider circle of people, and so on, and so on. The point is, we can't just look at a single couple and say that there will be less people in the future based only on the procreative decision of that couple. In fact, we literally cannot predict if the number of children in the next generation will be smaller, the same, or greater than if our chosen couple had children of their own. This is chaos theory in action. Let's change gears and follow the other method of widening the scope, expanding the time horizon. In this case, let's first look at a much simpler scenario. We have 100 mice. 50 mice are gray and 50 mice are brown. They have space to roam. They explore their territory. They forage for food. They run from cats, a normal, everyday mice life. Say the brown mice are less likely to have children. While 50 gray mice will have 100 baby mice, the 50 brown mice will have only 80 baby mice. Only half of them get to adulthood. So, in the next generation, we'll still have 50 gray mice, but only 40 brown mice. That's 90 rodents. Less baby mice. Success! Not so fast. We're looking further in time, remember? The environment barely changed, so there is similar amount of food and dangers, but less mice. Less mice means that there is more food for each mouse. Gray mice are efficient procreators. Given more food, they will have 120 baby mice. But the brown ones will have only 70 offspring. Again, half of each reaches adulthood. We end up with 60 gray mice and 35 brown ones. That's 95 adults in total. We started with 100, we dipped to 90, and now we're back to 95. We can easily see that the less brown mice reproduce, the more the gray ones reproduce. After a couple of generations, we could see 6 adult brown mice, but 130 gray ones. In the not so far future, we could see numerous populations of mice compared to a neutral scenario where each mice breed has approximately the same number of offspring. Yes, resources are scarce, but nature does not tolerate waste. It is not a stretch to apply our learning to humans. When one tribe becomes less and less numerous, the other tribes have more successes in hunting and foraging. They become more and more populous as the time goes on. And the same could happen in our civilized world. A decrease of one population or nation will allow others to migrate there, live there, work there, and have children there. In the end, there might be more people in the future. I say it might be because of course we cannot see the future. We can't even remotely accurately predict what would happen. Any speculation is just a wild guess. The scenarios with mice and then humans were just imaginary futures. There is no way to say that it's true or even how likely it is, but it's possible. And the point here is that we simply cannot tell how the world will look like in our future or in any alternative future. One thing is clear, people are having children. People will be having children for the foreseeable future. With this wider perspective, the question is not how many people will there be, but whose children they will be and who will they be. History knows of religious groups, especially linked to Christian Gnosticism, and their views of the world as a kind of hell created by an evil god. Manichaeans, and later the Shakers. We can't attribute their decline just to them viewing procreation as a sin, but it was certainly a significant factor. Manichaeans are no more. The Shakers are almost all gone. And what of it? They were simply replaced by other groups, such as Catholics. These groups could then use the freed resources and land to increase in numbers. They did not introduce any significant antinatalist effect. The only thing that changed is that other peoples grew. And we already see it happening. While birth rates are falling, the birth rates of progressives are much lower and are falling much faster than those of conservatives. More and more, it will be the children of conservatives who will populate and rule the earth. Evolution will make sure that the world will be filled with life to the brim. Some time ago, John Williams from Antinatalist Advocacy said something that stirred a little drama. He said that it would be perfectly fine and in line with antinatalism to donate sperm to a sperm bank because it wouldn't lead to there being more children born. He said that in so doing we could contribute to the propagation of compassionate genes. And indeed, A lot of traits, such as intelligence, personality, and propensity to addictions, are strongly heritable. So, on the biological and scientific level, he might have been right. But what stirred the controversy was him saying that such practice would be in line with antinatalism. I saw that as silly, absurd even, and I wasn't alone in that. Now I see that he was right in saying that because it will not change how many people will be born, but will only affect who the children will be. What he was wrong about was him saying that it would be morally unproblematic from the antinatalist perspective. Now I see that it's actually an argument against antinatalism, especially when used in tandem with all the rest presented here. You might say, but the climate change, the nuclear war, the ecological degradation, rising sea levels, a comet hitting the Earth. Why bring children into the world when we are doomed? Let's take the more cinematic of these. A comet hitting Earth or a nuclear war. It would be catastrophic to all life, but it wouldn't really be anything new. Earth has been hit by various meteors since it formed. Every now and then, a raging ball of fire explodes on the surface or falls into an ocean. This only makes space for life to populate it anew. This is what happened with the dinosaurs around 65 million years ago. Most large animals went extinct. Did it reduce suffering or reduce the number of sentient creatures? Briefly. Instead of dinosaurs, we now have a planet populated by mammals, birds, smaller reptiles, fish, insects, etc. Do we have more or less animals? Who knows? One group of creatures disappeared, making space for others to flourish. The exact same thing will happen again when the light of humanity gets extinguished by some catastrophe. The old makes way for the new. On the individual level, does it matter much whose descendants will live and face the challenges in the future? An antinatalist could also say, at least I won't be bringing any children into existence. I won't have blood on my hands. But it is not about goodness, for no goodness comes out of it. It is about preserving one's image of oneself. Is it wise to cherish one's self-image when it matters not to the world? Maybe one could let go of considering the consequences and focus on one's character and virtues. But I don't know of any arguments for antinatalism that would work like that. Similarly, to the objection that procreation is still morally wrong, even if humanity will continue into the future, we can respond that if something cannot be said to lead to a better world, and it cannot be said to lead to a worse world, then it is not a good nor an evil. It's morally irrelevant. This is not a utilitarian line of argumentation. Utilitarianism would require a moral judgment and impose a choice, and to do that we would have to know or estimate the effects, but this cannot be done. Another objection that I heard recently that is connected to the sperm bank scenario is when someone asks, why do you want to have your own children? Why does it have to be your children, your DNA? Will your children be better than others? You say we need to breed the good guys? Are you better than others? To which the response can be a trivial reversal of these questions. Why does it have to be someone else's children, their DNA? Will their children be better than mine? Are they better than me? Behind this triviality is a larger point though. It's pointless to even ask these questions because they are unanswerable. One knee-jerk reaction to the argumentation presented here would be a challenge raised by an antinatalist. Say the same about murder. Say that killing someone doesn't change anything. After all, if we say that having a child cannot be said to be wrong because we cannot know if the world will be worse or not, then we could just as well say that killing someone cannot be said to be wrong because here too we cannot predict how the world will turn out in the future. However, it's a completely different thing to do something to an existing person versus choosing one child over another. An existing person already has a life that is being cherished by them. When we're considering procreation, it's never, as the argument goes, the question of whether a child will be born, but only a question of whose child it will be and who will this child be. So, in the case of procreation, we're essentially influencing who will be born and who will raise them. And this brings us to the final, probably the strongest objection. Bringing a child into existence affects that particular human being. That child has been created. That child will now have to face the world, will be exposed to various risks and to inevitable suffering and death. From the perspective of this child, it matters a great deal that he now lives and must struggle to survive. In fact, it makes the world of difference to him. Merely saying that if it wasn't this child, it would have been someone else doesn't really matter to the child that has actually been born. If so, then the child, once grown up, could legitimately say to his parents, "You have wronged me." But since he already is in the world, he would have to decide for himself whether his life is so bad that it would have been better had he never been born, or maybe that he cherishes all the good moments and expects future experiences to be worth it. But the parents cannot rely on that. They have to make the decision much earlier. And this is where all the arguments against procreation come into play. Will they make his own child suffer? Yes, but they also must consider the goods they can bestow on the future child. And if they believe they can make the life of their own child beautiful, then it might be better that they will have descendants instead of someone else. The world will be, and people will live in the future. The world might indeed be better with their child, but that depends, in some part at least, on who they are and how will they raise the child. This entire line of argumentation works best when we look at humanity from a high mountain. From afar, we see people mingling with each other, breaking up, getting together, and having children. With a wide perspective and looking far into the future, we clearly see that the decisions people make influences only whose descendants will populate Earth. I see this as a pretty decent argument against antinatalism. At least, having that wider perspective changes how I view people who decide to have children. On the larger scale, it doesn't really matter. If the future will not have descendants of one couple, it will surely have descendants of other couples. This is the application of the "if not this, then that" principle in line with Stoic thought.